Hey guys, welcome back to some more videos, the Explorer of Horror here. And today I wanted to get into reviewing a trilogy. I know in the past I would do franchise, whenever I'd cover a franchise, I would do the franchise like one by one. Like if I was doing Friday the 13th, I would review from part 1 all the way till the 12th movie in individual videos. And it takes up a lot of videos. So I want to try something new. If it works, I'll keep doing it where I'll cover the whole franchise in just one video or a live stream. I'll just sit down and I will try to get through it as much as I can. But today is going to be an interesting video because these are films that I have not watched in some time. Me and these films kind of go way back as far as YouTube goes. This is the one of the first franchises I ever covered on YouTube, and it's crazy to think that it's been at least 10 years almost since I've seen the sequels, and it's been like 7 years since I've seen the first movie. We're going to be covering the Hostel trilogy today. So shades off, ready to get down to business. We're going to be covering each movie in this trilogy. I'm going to talk about in depth a little bit for each movie. This video, I don't know really how long it'll be, but we're going to be going through the trilogy sort of in detail, my thoughts, overall thoughts, going through the plot, typical review stuff. But of course, we're kicking off with the first movie, Hostel. Now, Hostel is one of the more infamous films from the 2000s. And honestly, I think with this being released and Saw being released and Hills of Eyes and just movies that were really gory and really just crazy. I know Wolf Creek was a big movie around this time. And I think with just a combination of movies that were just pretty brutal, violent, and gory, a lot of these films got lumped into a category of horror films called torture porn, which I think is a bit offensive. I think it's kind of messed up that they lumped this and Saw into torture porn, and people just saying that these movies are useless, they're pointless, there's no point in watching them, there's nothing to gain from watching them. And I disagree. I'm a really big fan of Saw. I love some of the sequels even, like Saw 2 and 3. I have fun with Part 4. I have fun with Part 5. I had fun with Spiral. But Hostel is a movie that I remember hearing about a lot growing up. This was a very infamous movie. Of course, directed by Eli Roth. Did Cabin Fever. I like Cabin Fever a lot. I won't lie. It's a pretty good movie. I like it. I didn't mind The Green Inferno. I thought it was pretty good. I didn't see Knock Knock. I didn't see a couple of the other films he's made. I know he's making a Thanksgiving movie, like a horror film that's based off of the short he made for the Grindhouse movies back in the day. So that's pretty cool to know. I know he also did a remake of... what was that movie he did a remake of? Man, I almost said Death Warrant, but I think it's Death Wish. Yeah, he made like a remake for Death Wish starring Bruce Willis, which I didn't hear the greatest things about, but I haven't seen that. I haven't even seen the original Death Wish. But Hostel, like I said, this is a film that was very infamous when it came out. I mean, this movie, for certain key scenes, was always talked about as like, oh, Hostel's so gross, it's so disturbing, it's so out there. It was really a movie at the time that people were saying like, oh, you can't handle this movie. You know, it's kind of funny because look at it now, and it's not tame, but it's, you know, we've gotten movies since this where it's fucking pushed it so far. And I do think there are movies out there that are torture porn, but I would definitely not lump Hostel in there. I think it tells a pretty interesting story, and hearing the interviews and, you know, hearing Eli Roth talk about these films and what he was trying to do with them really gets you a good understanding with what he was trying to do with this first movie and what he was trying to do with Part 2. And the story, you have 3 friends, 3 backpackers They are over in Europe, and they are, hitting up clubs, having fun, kind of being douchebags and assholes, but they hear about this place where they can find the most beautiful women. The hottest chicks. You go there, you're American. They're going to hear they're going to hear your accent and just instantly get with you. And they're hearing about this, and they visit this place, this hostel. And while they're there, they end up finding out, well, Jay Hernandez mainly finds out that basically people are going there to kill people, pay to kill people. And it unfolds real fast, and you just are, the first movie is really well done as far as the mystery, as far as wondering what's going on here. Okay, how's this work? And then it does a good job at, this first movie is the outsider's view of the elite hunting club and what they're doing. The second movie is a much more insider's view, which I will get to Hostel Part 2. I want to save my thoughts because y'all know I used to put Hostel Part 2 on the worst horror film sequels list, and I used to always bring it up and bash it, but I must say there's been quite a U-turn of an opinion on that film. But the first Hostel I've always liked. I really enjoy. I think it is truly one of the better horror films from the 2000s. I think it tells a really good story about dudes who go overseas and, they're Americans. They're trying to, just the whole idea of being foreigners in a different country and how people look at them and talk to them and how they're trying to be all macho about it. We're Americans, being macho about it. And they're just guys looking for chicks 24/7. The way they talk about females and the way they just approach basically everything. They end up, they're just basically douchebags. Plain and simple. They're not very likable characters. They're not hateable. They're not villains. They're just typical college douchebag, typical college people. Not that everybody in college is a douchebag, but they're, they just act like, all they're there to do is do drugs and find chicks, find hot chicks. And I do think, though, that Jay Hernandez and Derek Richardson, they are likable characters in some ways. Like, they're not total pieces of crap. Jay Hernandez really does show that he has a decent side to his character. And Derek Richardson, to me, is a really good character as far as him just kind of being drug along with this, and he's not so much into that. They take him to this place where, they have a prostitute waiting for him in this room, and even he's not really into it. And so he's a very interesting character. And yeah, I think all three of the guys, they all have, there's a guy named Oli who, I think is from Iceland, and he's just this crazy party guy, and he's always looking for chicks. And they are, like, slightly unlikable, but they also find ways to be entertainingly unlikable. And honestly, watching this movie back again, I kind of see what Eli Roth was doing with this movie, whereas they're taking advantage of women. Constantly, they look at women as, sex objects, basically. That's strictly what they look at women as. How they talk about women, what they say. And basically, the women end up getting revenge at the end of the movie, where because of them falling for these hot chicks, they get paid to bring them to this area, this sort of abandoned factory where they're killing people and torturing them. And so it was a really interesting plot. It really is an idea that is definitely interesting. It's different. It hasn't really been done before. And I think the first one, it's gory, it's brutal. This is the uncut version, the director's cut. This does have the alternate ending, which I much prefer the theatrical cut ending, because I think it's a much better way to end it. But it does have the director's preferred ending. But it is kind of weird because Eli Roth, he looks back at this movie, and honestly, he made Hostel Part 2 to sort of be what he wanted this movie to be. And so really everything he sets up in this movie, he kind of says, no, we're doing something completely different in this movie, which is one of my problems with that sequel. But I love the ending. I love how Jay Hernandez is just, he's being tortured, but he escapes. He starts fighting back, starts killing people, gets out of there, runs over the people that set him up. And it's a really good ending. I think the gore effects still hold up. There's not a lot of CGI in there that I can notice. I love the environment of just it being shot, I think, in Slovakia. And just the usage of the locations. And the music. Surprisingly, the music in this movie is very, very well done. I love the score. I love the piece of music that plays when they get to this town they're going to. And the score just picks up, and it's very well directed and shot by Eli Roth. This is his second movie, I think. It's either his second or his third movie. And it's shot and directed very, very well for the low budget. And you see right there, Quentin Tarantino had a hand in producing and releasing this movie. And Eli Roth, I guess I can get into this right now too, used to be a director that sort of everybody, when I first got on YouTube, it was always Eli Roth, Adam Green, Rob Zombie, people going after them, sort of. Like, there are fans, obviously, of Eli Roth, but then there are people that are completely against him and completely against Rob Zombie and Adam Green. Me, I like all three directors. I think they all do have unique visions, and I used to try to be a part of that train where it's like, yeah, Eli Roth, what cringe, da-da-da. But honestly, I like Eli Roth's films. I like Cabin Fever, I like The Green Inferno, I like the Hostel movies he made. I do think there are times where the writing is a bit dodgy. There's certain times where characters could be a little bit more likable. But, yeah, I mean, Hostel, the first one, I think is a really well-made movie. And if you're a fan, this DVD is pretty good. Has a lot of features, has making of documentaries, featurettes. If you're a fan, pick this up. It's pretty cool. But yeah, the first Hostel, I thoroughly enjoy this movie. I think it's a very well-made movie. I think it kind of gets looked at a bit in the wrong way, where it's just pointless torture. There's no story. There's no point. Why watch this? There's plenty of reasons to watch this. It's a story about guys who think they know everything, who think they are macho, and they end up being shown like, hey, you ain't shit now. But yeah, it's a well-made movie, man. I really enjoy the first Hostel. Now things get interesting, because now we talk about Hostel Part 2, which I remember for years I had only seen the first Hostel, and I had no clue there was a Hostel Part 2 until I found it on DVD, and I was like, what, there's a sequel? I gotta check it out. And I'll be honest, this is a sequel for a long time. I really can't tell you just why I hated this movie. And the reasons why I hated this movie, I don't agree with now. Whereas in the past, I was saying how I don't like how they explain everything. I don't like how we get to see how the inside works for the Elite Hunting Club. I didn't like the backstories and just trying to basically be more of an inside story on how everything works. And I mean, it is a very similar story, but it is much more like, okay, the first movie was the elusive story, the very much like mystery, like what's going on here. We know what's going on now. So this movie is filling in the gaps. How do they kidnap people? What's the process? How do the auctions go for these people? How it's global, how there are people all around the world who are betting on people, basically. And you're seeing a lot more of the inner workings of this club, which this time around I thought was really interesting. I think Hostel Part 2 rebounded with this watch. Rebounded, because I now think Hostel Part 2 is one of the best sequels out there, because it does what a sequel should do as far as following the first movie, doing some more blood, more gore, Sequels should always try to do that, where it's let's step it up, more brutal, and establishing more of the lore, opening up the world of Hostel more. And yeah, like I said, the first time I watched it, I was just really disappointed because for a while I was it's hard to admit this. I liked this more than part 2 for the longest time. And my God, man, I can't tell. I don't know what was going on with me back then. I think what it was is this is less about the torturing and more about the backstory. And I was like, oh man, at least part 3 gets right to the torturing. At least we get to see some gore and special effects. When you still see torture scenes, you still see gore, but it's definitely not the focal point. It's not like you're seeing the first movie where everybody's waking up in these rooms and what's going on. This one, you do get your torture scenes, you do get your gore, but it's a lot more about the story and the characters in this movie. And it is kind of similar. We have, instead of 3 dudes, it's 3 chicks. And same thing kind of happens. They go to this hostel, and one of them is like super rich and has an insane amount of money where she could buy everything, basically. And while she's there, you know, people got their eyes on her, people are bidding on her, and she meets with this other chick who is trying to be her friend. Her other friends are also with her. One's the chick from Scream 3 and 5, technically, Randy's sister. She's in this movie, playing a sort of, I guess, annoyingly innocent character. She's like, I'm just trying to soak in the environment, you know. I have my journal. And I just write in it because it's so peaceful. I'm just trying to absorb the energy of the positivity of what's going on here. Like, she's just over the top. Like, I don't really know what the character is. I guess it's just trying to be super innocent to where it's like corny, to where it's just awful. But, and she dies in a horrifically awful way too. So it's kind of like, holy shit. But, you know, her friends are with her, and it is kind of the same thing where they eventually get taken to the compound, and you start seeing some torture here and there. But most of the movie doesn't really focus on that stuff. It focuses on seeing the auctions happening, seeing there's this guy who's sort of a family man. You get the idea that maybe he hates his wife, maybe he hates his entire life. And he's being drugged into this by this guy who's all hyped up like, yeah, man, we're doing this. This is real. This is as real as it gets, man. You can't back out now. You can't back out. And it's weird because the guy who's sort of not into this snaps and becomes a complete psycho by the end of the movie. And the guy that's really into it and has the adrenaline rush gets freaked out and leaves. And, of course, he didn't kill the person, so they kill him. And, it's a really interesting part of the story. And the ending is very shocking. I mean, this guy tries to basically rape the lead character, and she gets revenge on him, beats him up, and has the knife to his privates and says, hey, I can outpay for what this dude's paying you guys. And they're like, oh, there's only one problem. You can't leave here until, you know, nobody leaves the compound until you've killed someone. And she just castrates him and throws the privates to the dogs, and they eat up the privates. It's really like, oh my God, it's like, and it's practical too. It's not CG, it's practical. And it's really hard to watch. Really shocking, out there ending. And basically you get the idea the lead girl joins them and becomes part of the club. And yeah, man, this movie just really surprised me at how much I now really, really enjoy this film. I just didn't ever expect myself to say that. For years, it was always, I hate Hostel Part 2, I hate it. But no, I think it's a wonderful sequel. It follows up the first movie very well. Eli Roth coming back to direct, Quentin Tarantino coming back as well. So it feels like an authentic sequel. It feels like it follows up the first movie very well. Once again, directed and shot very well. The locations are still nice to look at. And it was interesting seeing the inner workings of this group and seeing how everything comes together. And yeah, and this DVD also has a lot of features. Good movie, good sequel, really enjoy it. I forgot to give the first movie a rating. I'd give both movies 4 out of 5. I know it's pretty high up there, but I really did enjoy the first two Hostels this time around. Very well made movies for what they are. For what they are, they're about torture and gore and craziness. They're very, very well made movies. So Hostel Part 2. And now, we got to get to this one. Hostel Part 3. And there's a commentary track by Scott Spiegel. And actor Kip Pardue. I don't even know who that is in the movie. Hostel Part 3, man. First of all, this is a very hard movie to find. I couldn't find this movie for so long. These movies are owned by Sony. And yeah, good luck finding these streaming anywhere, because Sony doesn't really stream stuff unless you buy it individually. But I finally found it for dirt cheap, too. So I was like, hey, at least it's dirt cheap. And I don't know why I used to like this movie so much. This is exactly like Poltergeist 3. Where Poltergeist 3, I used to pretty much defend that movie and be like, no, Poltergeist 3 is a great sequel. It's great. It's wonderful. I don't know why I did that. I don't know why I like this movie so much. This movie, I used to say, was even decent and okay. It's honestly not very good at all. It's got some basic stuff that you would think is okay. Some gore. And I like the location of Las Vegas, but honestly, it doesn't fit this movie. And it's only part 3. So part 3, you're taking it away from the Slovakia location, away from that hostel, and saying that there's a separate group in America, in Vegas, that's doing the same thing. And it's a part 3. It doesn't even follow the first two movies good at all, honestly. Like, this honestly is not even... It's connected by the name and the fact that there's torture in this movie. But it is so, like, you didn't need the Las Vegas gimmick. You didn't need it. Leprechaun 3, it works because it matches that movie and it's fun. You didn't need to do that with Hostel Part 3. Hostel Part 3, if it was low budget, just do Hostel Part 3 in Slovakia again. Or pick something different other than Vegas. Vegas, while I like the location, it's like, it doesn't fit. Like, why is Hostel in Las Vegas? It didn't work this time around, man. And also, the cast and the writing. And this is directed by Scott Spiegel. Now, I'm a pretty big fan of Scott Spiegel. And Scott Spiegel directed one of my favorite direct-to-video sequels. From Dusk Till Dawn Part 2, Texas Blood Money. Love that sequel. Love Intruder to death. Seen interviews with him. I've watched interviews, featurettes, documentaries. Cool guy. Big fan of his style. You would not even be able to tell this is Scott Spiegel, honestly. There's maybe 2 minor things where it's like, oh, the shot of the cockroaches going down her mouth, that could be a Scott Spiegel thing. You know, maybe here and there you're seeing little shots here and there. Honestly, you couldn't even... I couldn't even tell this was Scott Spiegel, honestly. And I'm not sure what happened to this movie, man, because number one, it's not interesting. It's not interesting. I don't care about these characters. You got one guy that looks like a ripoff of David Caruso. You got another guy that looks like a ripoff of Paul Walker. You got another guy who's sort of this cripple guy who, I swear, once again, they get these actors that look famous, but they're not the actors who you think they are. Like, oh, that guy kind of looks like David Caruso or Paul Walker, or even the crippled character. He looks like he was oh, he looks familiar. What was he from? As well as the asshole character, Mike, like Skylar Stone. Looks like a familiar face, but I have no clue what I've seen him in. And these characters, they are not well done at all. This movie is doing a very big mistake. This was not written by Eli Roth. This was not directed by Eli Roth. This was not produced by Quentin Tarantino. All those things are extremely obvious in this film, and they're trying their best to make it Eli Roth and to make it Quentin Tarantino, and it doesn't have an identity. It's trying to be the first two movies again, and it doesn't work a third time around. It doesn't. And maybe that's why you can't make any more Hostels. Maybe that's just, it's done. Like, it's already stale. It's already kind of slow and boring. It's done. But I don't know, man. I think what it was is this goes back to the torture. Like, all right, we're gonna get some more gore, some torture. We're gonna get some ideas for kills. I can't even say decent ideas for the most part. But it's like, okay, first movie, mystery. Second movie, explaining things. This one, just go back to the gore. Let's just have some kill scenes. And maybe that's why before I was like, oh yeah, I prefer this one over Hostel Part 2. Like I said, I just don't understand why I said that. The movie looks really cheap. It looks like it was a TV movie. The Las Vegas location looks authentic in maybe 2 scenes. The rest of the time, it's a blue screen or a green screen. Or it was like it was shot anywhere else but Las Vegas. So the use of the location, lame. There's one scene in a casino. One scene. You could have had a whole casino where people are gambling or whatever, and then in the middle of it, you can have someone getting tortured, showing how messed up of an idea it is. Like, oh my God, they're so crazy. They're just gambling. There's a person over here dying. They don't even care. No, they make it to where it's this place way out in the desert, and it looks cheap. Looks like it was a CGI building. These guys have the bloodhound tattoos on their arms, and they scan it, and somehow that unlocks doors. I'm just like, oh my God. It became so cheesy and cheap looking. They get the guy from Resident Evil Apocalypse. I can't remember his name. He was the villain in that movie. For any big fans of Resident Evil Apocalypse, that dude comes back in this movie, and he's playing a villain again. He plays a villain like 5 times in 5 different movies. And this time, the club is not interesting. They made it boring. It has no identity. The torture scenes have no suspense. Instead of it being all gritty and creepy looking abandoned factory, you make it squeaky clean and well lit, and it just doesn't, there's no suspense. It doesn't look creepy. It doesn't look atmospheric. Even the idea of, oh, well, while the torture's going on, they're watching from behind the glass. I was like, I guess it's okay, but it doesn't I don't know. Nothing about this movie matched. It felt like they were trying to write another horror film, and they said, oh, torture? Hostel. We haven't made a Hostel movie in years. We're just going to put the title Hostel, and we're going to slap in the Bloodhound, the Elite Hunting Club logo, a little bit here and there, just call it Hostel. And it's just like people being held in these really cheap looking cages. Like they shot it on a set somewhere, a set left over from a TV show or something. And it just, the finale is lame. I don't care about any of these characters. At least in the first 2, they had good characters and good actors. I thought the previous movies actually had pretty good casts, and for what they were, Lauren German, Heather Matsuru. Yeah, just, so many other, just, Jay Hernandez. Was it Derek Richardson from the first movie? Good cast in part 2, good cast in part 1. So, I don't know. In the kill scenes, you have a lame idea, it was stupid, where this guy basically pours cockroaches all over this chick, and they go down her mouth in CGI. Another guy gets his face cut off, semi-practical, semi-CGI. That's it. Another death, which I thought was the most painful to watch, was there's this chick with this really creepy mask on, and she's shooting these arrows from this crossbow into this guy one by one, and he starts to die real slowly. It's like, that was the one death scene where I was like, okay, that's pretty intense. But then they let the lead guy go, and he runs around, and somehow the power gets cut because this other guy over here escapes somehow. And it's just a really half-assed ending where it's like, okay, everybody evacuated, I guess. Like in 5 seconds, everybody was out of there. CGI building in the middle of a CGI desert. And at the end of the CGI explosion. And this is direct-to-video, so you can imagine how that looked. Yeah, man, the ending's really just nothing. Most of the villains get killed, but it's like, I don't care about these villains. These villains suck. They try to do this thing at the beginning where, oh, this Russian couple, this guy, this American, and oh, it could be taking place in Slovakia. You know, no. Why would you do that? That's a stupid opening. Look at your cover. Las Vegas. I can read the synopsis. Las Vegas. I know it's in Vegas. That's your whole gimmick. So why would you sit there and be like, well, is it still in, Slovakia? Is it still that old hostel? No, it's not. And the American dude is, oh, he's the villain. I don't care. In the end of the movie, oh, the lead guy didn't die. He's still alive. I don't care. It's lame. It's stupid. And the ending, they tie this dude up, the David Caruso looking guy, in the shed, and CGI blood, they begin to torture him. And I'm just like, this is bad. This is really, really bad. I don't even know if I could say it's okay anymore. I know for years I went from liking it to thinking it was okay to where now it's just bad. It's a lame sequel, man. I'll be honest. It's a 2 out of 5 for me, maybe a 1. It's down there. It barely follows anything at all from the first 2 movies. It doesn't even seem like Hostel at times, other than there's torture. That's the only thing about it that's Hostel, and maybe a few Elite Hunting logos, the Bloodhound logos, maybe a few things. Other than that, you couldn't tell this is a Hostel movie. And that's trying to retread things from the first movie again, trying to have that Eli Roth dialogue of these guys, oh, women, women, women. And it's just like, it's been done. And it's been done better. Because you had Jay Hernandez, Derek Richardson. It's just like, it's been done before. It's over. Don't do it anymore. It's tired. It's just like, if they're going to keep making Hostels like this, I don't want to see anymore. And it's been, 12 years since this came out, 2011. But yeah, Hostel Part 3, very lackluster follow-up to the other 2 movies. And overall, barely a 2 out of 5. That's me being generous. But yeah, to get away from Hostel Part 3, it was fun going back and watching the first 2 again and really seeing how the second movie, my opinion totally changed on that. It had changed on this, and honestly, it changed from the first one. I actually do have a lot of respect for those first 2 Hostel movies. Those are very well-made movies for what they are, for the story they're telling, for what they're doing. They're very well-made movies. But anyways, that's it for the Hostel trilogy. Overall, first 2 were pretty good. Third one, pretty bad. But anyways, that's going to be it for this video tonight, guys. I will see you guys later. If you guys have seen Hostel, comment down below. Let me know your guys' thoughts on it. I want to hear what you guys have to think about the Hostel movies. But anyways, thanks so much for watching. The Explorer Force out. And I will see you guys on the next review. Peace.